So there is this thing that I've noticed a couple of days ago while I was just walking outside, where there are so many things that we try to understand that we hear people talk about, or we hear in podcasts, or we read in books, or maybe see in movies and TV shows, whatever the source is. And we tend to understand the concept and the idea, and like, yeah, this makes sense. But then maybe some years pass, and then you experience something, or something happens to you, and then that same idea starts to sink in much deeper, where you start to notice that you don't just understand it anymore, but you are living it, and it's just part of your life, and it makes you see the world in a different way. And this brought me to the idea of this episode, where understanding and realizing are completely different thing, and maybe we can talk a bit deeper about that. And so I'm just gonna start by asking you, what does understanding mean to you, and how do you differentiate it from realizing things? I guess you see this difference like I do.
There's a huge difference, and I've mentioned before. You can knowing something, you call it understanding. I call it knowing. Because for me, knowledge is nothing if you don't understand. Like if you know something, you understand it. If you don't understand something, then you don't know it. So for me, I call it knowing and realization. You call it understanding and realization. Um, there's always a huge difference between when you know something and when you realize it. Realization could be anything from an experience to an aha moment to maybe having an epiphany about some topic. I look at it like you can, for example, I'm just going to take a bunch of different examples here. You know that you should eat healthy food and you understand why. You know why you should exercise and you understand why. You know why you shouldn't be smoking, for example, and you understand the reasons behind it. You know why you should be doing this and not this, and you understand the reasons why. Yet, a lot of people, me included, of course, get stuck in the loops of like, okay, I know and I understand, but I'm not doing it. And then, like I said, it's either an epiphany or a decision or an aha moment when you realize that you just have that moment of realization, and you have like a deeper connection with whether it's the lesson that you're dealing with there or the life decisions or whatever it is that you're dealing with. And then when you have this realization, I feel like that's when we kind of take kind of a huge shift in perspective.
Leap of change or growth.
Something like this, and then you start kind of internalizing
Internalize.
what you've learned or what you've realized or whatever it is.
That's what I mean by
And it kind of becomes a part of who you
Yeah.
are.
But I guess then you can't choose when to realize things. Like, if you want to understand something, you can make the choice, like, okay, I want to read this book, I'm going to try to understand it. You can understand it all you want, but you can't choose when you are going to realize something. That's why we call it the aha moment or epiphany or intuition, because you have no control over that. It's something in your subconscious, and you start to experience certain things that lead you to this conclusion.
I'm not certain about that.
Yeah.
So
Also,
I believe that most of the times when we realize stuff, they happen, or these moments happen in an environment and in a specific mental state when you are
receptive.
receptive, you're more open to the world,
Yeah.
and you are kind of more not just relaxed into it, but you're just like you're just keeping an open mind. Let's put it
You're
like this.
always
All right, you
willing
are
to.
understanding of yourself, you're being understanding of the world around you, and then something happen or something kind of triggers that thought in you, and then that's when the realization of the aha moment happens.
It's like you keep the door open to.
Exactly. So can we influence ourselves to have more aha moments?
Sure.
I would say yeah, we can.
Okay,
We just
well,
have to keep like a little bit more open to life, open to the experience, open to what's going on around us, and that will make the possibility of this aha moment happening higher than the usual.
I guess that makes sense. Like, you can influence. It's the same when we talk about ideas, that you can't control what ideas are going to come to you, but you stay receptive and keep your eyes open or your mind open, that when this idea comes, you will listen to it and you will interact with it, you know? So I guess it works in the same way. Like you can influence this realization, but you still don't have full control over when it will happen.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It just, that's why it's called an aha moment after all.
I guess something else is important to note here is that like understanding is more related to your it's more related to being intellectual and thinking about things and deep thoughts and connecting dots, while realizing things is related more to your deep emotions and the way you feel about things, and that what makes you have these different sensations that make you realize like what happiness really means, what it means to be depressed, and all of these different states. I guess like someone who doesn't have depression can try to understand what it means someone is depressed, that can't feel good emotions, always beating themselves up, but he's not going to realize how it really is until he goes in that mental state and lives with it for a while. Like, okay, that's what it means to be depressed, and he starts to become maybe more empathetic to other people who are depressed. So I guess that also means that realization makes you understand other people on a deeper level as well. Like when you're trying to have a conversation with a friend, you're talking about something, you might understand what they're trying to say, but there is not this level of connection that you have,
I think you kind of mixing things up here a little bit, because I don't think realization related to understanding other people better. I think realization is more about understanding how life actually works more. When I say how life works, I mean, for example, you get that realization of like, okay, life isn't just all about happiness, or life isn't about all of this and this, and then you just have this stuck aha moment where you just realize and have a deeper understanding of life and of the universe that we live in, and of the experience that we call it life anyways.
But I think it does make you understand other people as well on a deeper level.
Not necessarily, because then you're understanding other people that are that have already realized this as well. But the people that didn't realize this as well, since you have that huge shift inside of you, you're gonna struggle to understand them more.
You have a good point here. Maybe that's why we fall off from friendships and people where
definitely we've mentioned this before and it's been talked about a lot. But as life goes, every person, every relationship, every friendship brings out a specific side of you, and at the end of the day, humans change. We all change. We all realize stuff. We all decide to take different routes, different actions, different this and this in our lives. And at some point, you just realize that there's not that much of connection between you and the specific person. Whether it's because you went in a different way or a different path than they've been going on, or whether it's because you grew up and you started handling things differently than they did, or because of realization that you've had, the connection that you've had with this person kind of disappears. Yeah. And then that's when a lot of people, I guess, decide, okay, like maybe I should move on or stop talking to this person, or they just do it anyways.
So maybe this is where many people get stuck, that in this understanding phase, I guess, like there is a phase before it, I guess, when you're like completely closed-minded. You don't want to understand anything.
I was gonna refer to that. It's like when you, I think I've heard it somewhere. I don't know if I've heard the term somewhere or something that I came up with at some point. I don't remember. But it's like a self-serving prophecy, which is also kind of
self-fulfilling prophecy. Self-serving. Maybe there's a difference here. I'm not so sure.
Okay.
Because I've never heard the term self-serving before.
So what it means, it's kind of confirmation bias. So let's say you are going through a harsh time and you're depressed, and you're trying to find stuff that would confirm that you're depressed, and you're trying to find things that would tell you that life sucks and this and this. Better. So you're looking for a prophecy that says that you're someone who's unlucky, who's depressed, who's this and this, and you start looking for things that would make it seem more true.
That makes you even more depressed.
Exactly. And then
But I think it is self-fulfilling prophecy because it is something that is fulfilling itself, that it's happening. It's like you're stuck in a loop,
okay,
you know?
sure.
So I think that's
from,
why.
from that angle,
That's why
then
my
yeah, sure.
confusion comes.
Okay, I went with the self-serving
Self-serving, I guess, works as well
because it's kind of serving.
Yeah.
It's something that's you are serving the prophecy that you believe
you're
that's
serving you're serving your ideas and the things that you believe in the moment.
and
You know?
back to the main point, which is when you are in that self-fulfilling serving prophecy, you're closed-minded because you only believe, you only understand, and you only know that life sucks, that it's harsh, that you're depressed, that you're always sad, that this and that. And then you kind of just close up completely. You build this walls around you as a defense mechanism from what's going on
And
outside of
you
you.
avoid other information, like
Which, not only this, even if you read them, you're just building more and more walls so they don't go through. And then you kind of get stuck in that phase of like, you're not getting any realizations about life. And you just are in a never ending loop where everything that happens every day is telling you the same things. And these same things that are getting told to you are just confirming the way that you're feeling and the state that you're being into. And it's a dangerous place to be in. It makes it hard for you to comprehend life, to be able to be more open, to have realizations,
I guess
to have a
this is
deeper
where-
understanding of things as well.
But I guess this is where most of us start. Like most of us, maybe not. I'm not gonna say everyone because I'm pretty sure there are kids who grow up who their parents are open-minded and they teach them how to be more receptive and open-minded. But many of us start with this closed-minded bubble that
Yeah.
we're living in, and then
I think almost everybody ends up there.
Yeah,
even
yeah.
even if you're taught how to be open-minded,
Yeah.
I feel like at some point you start kind of closing off a little bit for whatever external reason that
Like when you're a
is.
teenager. Probably.
Exactly, and that's when things start changing a little
Yeah.
bit because you're just not open-minded anymore. And you're just closing off, and you're having new experience, and you start identifying as in a different way than you've been so far. Then, well, you get stuck in the
Yeah.
self-fulfilling serving prophecy.
I guess it's just different levels. So we could call this level 1, and then level 2 is when you start to try to understand things. You start to want
Mhm.
to read books and get advice and whatever, and just understand all of these different concepts. And you reach then level 3, where these seeds, I guess, these seeds in your brain start to grow, and you start to realize all of these different concepts that you have read many years ago. Through experience, through time, they start to become
Manifest
They
themselves.
start to manifest, and that's where you realize many things about life.
Definitely.
Do you have maybe some real life examples about difference between understanding and realizing, like from your own life, something that you've understood for a long time, and then there was one certain point where like, okay, now I actually realize this. Now it makes sense. Can you do you have
I
some
can-
certain example? from
I
that?
can name the examples, but I don't know how well it would
Doesn't matter.
click with other people. It's that your emotions. I have a better one actually. It's the question of understanding who you are. At the beginning, I always known that I don't know who I am, and nobody actually knows who they are. Because regardless of how much you know, there's always the subconscious brain, and then there's always the hidden parts, and there's always the shadow side, and then the whole story of it. And I've known about this for a long time, and I've understood the basics of it at least. And I try to kind of get more and more into knowing it and trying to figure out what are we as human beings? Do we have like souls? Do we have consciousness? All these kind of questions. And the day came where I was sitting down, and instead of trying to figure it out, I just sat down and I was wondering, which is something that I still do till this day. And sometimes just remind myself of like, who's aware that I'm thinking? Hey, I'm thinking, and I'm aware that I'm thinking. And then I'm aware that I'm aware that I'm thinking.
Who's sitting behind?
So who is behind all of this? If this is all the physical flesh that I've got, then who's aware that I'm thinking? And then that got me to another realization of like, do we have a collective consciousness, or is there some higher power that is in control of something, or is it the quantum physics? Because when you look at different generations, the same generations, in around the globe, all right, like across the whole freaking planet, and you start comparing childhoods from this country with the childhoods from this generation from just on the other side of the planet, you're gonna find out that there's a lot of similarities, even though,
Despite the difference.
despite that we're living in different cultures, different countries, different families, and there is no internet, so we don't have any way of knowing what the people on the other side of the planet are doing.
Yeah.
Yet somehow, in some magical way, they're doing similar things to us.
I think we're almost 99% similar.
I don't know the numbers, so I'm not gonna say anything.
Sure.
But when you look at these things and you start asking the questions, like I said, like who's aware that I'm thinking, who's aware of my feelings, who's in control of this and that. When I knew all of this, it just felt so not weird. It felt shallow.
Abstract as well.
It felt like, oh, okay, this is one of those ideas that this is what humans are. And then the moment that I started realizing it and it started hitting me on a deeper level, it didn't just pique my interest, but it wanted. I felt this kind of curiosity that there is something to it, and even if I don't explore it for the sake of exploring it, I want to explore it for the sake of myself at least. So I just kind of, I want to dive deeper into it, and at least for me, that hit me completely different.
Yeah, I think I can really relate to that. Like even to your example, like for me in the beginning, when I started to hear about these ideas from Sam Harris and from Alan Watts, I wouldn't say that I thought it was bullshit, but I thought it was exaggerated and there's a lot of abstraction in it and just some magical ideas, just like the things that I read from religions, which I stopped agreeing with. And I was like, oh, this is just another different version of this type of things that don't make sense. But then with time, it slowly started to sink in and like, yeah, who am I really? Like, is there an I in the first place? Are we spirits? Are we just consciousness? Is there something behind it? And what is identity in the first place? And I guess it's the same way how we dedicated many episodes in this podcast about, pure consciousness and identity, because we both have been through this experience of understanding these concepts, but then actually realizing what they mean, and they change the way we view life, I guess. I want to offer another example from my life. This is a more simple one. I think many people can relate to that. When they always say that money doesn't buy you happiness, that happiness comes from within. I used to think that's bullshit. No, you need to be rich to be happy. You need to have things. You need to be in the best relationship. You need to have best friends. And it really took me a very long time to understand what it means that happiness comes from within, and that no matter what you have, you can be in that happy state. There are things to be happy about. And I started to have the realization by just occupying more things, I guess. And I noticed that they didn't raise my level of happiness whatsoever. And what actually raised this level of happiness, just being more in tune with myself, accepting myself, loving myself, and getting closer to who I really want to be. And that is unrelated to all of the external things that I guess maybe I still like and get a little attached to, but they really don't bring you happiness. It really is from within, no matter how cringeworthy or cliche that tend to sound sometimes.
You can look at it like this as well. It's one of those stuff that I've experienced multiple times, that sometimes for no reason whatsoever you just feel
like shit.
No, I'm going with joy.
Okay, the opposite.
You just have an absurd amount of joy in
for
you.
no reason.
For no reason whatsoever.
But, I mean, you can say the same thing about feeling bad.
Exactly. And like that happened to me multiple times. Like there's literally nothing out of the ordinary that had happened. And I just feel an absurd amount of joy. And then you're just thinking, why? I don't know if people think this, but I was questioning, like I'm extremely happy and joyful and grateful. Why? Literally nothing changed since yesterday. I woke up in the same bed, the same job. I did the same morning routine in the sense of like I woke up, took my shower, ate, went to work.
There was no specific reason.
Nothing changed from the day before. Still, today I'm feeling absurd amounts of joyfulness and gratefulness. And then that's when I started realizing as well that, okay, happiness isn't really just about the external world. There's something within us that's probably related to many factors that we still are not aware of, or we have to kind of become more aware of. And that's where our happiness comes from.
Sometimes the most basic things that we do bring this joy and happiness in us. I heard it from I think his name is Dr. K. I heard him say it on a podcast, how sometimes the things that bring us the most joy are the simplest, like when we want to pee, when we are falling asleep,
Oh yeah.
when we are ready for a new meal. Like nothing can make us more happy than this.
Think
kind of
about it
things that
like
we do
this.
every single day.
How many times have you been stuck on the road and there was no bathroom?
And,
Or there was no way for you to kind of do your business?
and then the moment happens when
And
you're
then you're
actually
just
let
like,
out.
I could die a happy person right now.
Yeah.
0 fucks given about the world. I could die a happy man right now. And that's what gets you to question not just happiness, but technically any mental state that you can.
Yeah, negative or positive. Like I don't think it's like I used to think, okay, I'm a depressed person and negative when it's winter, and I'm a happy person in summer. But then I started to realize this kind of doesn't make sense, because I'm just relying on this external state of the world to tune in my emotions. But when I somehow not think about that, when I don't put these connections that, okay, winter bad, summer is good. There are winter days when I feel really happy and joyful, and there are also summer days when I'm just like feeling like shit. It has nothing to do with it.
It's just the way I feel like, for example, in this example specifically, there's ways that we connect to the weather. You know, it's like, oh no,
Yes.
like it's the way that we connect our an emotional state to the weather. So like, you know, there's people who go like, when it's cloudy, it's gloomy, and they instantly connect the clouds to gloominess. So when clouds are
This
there,
is just a concept. That's
Exactly.
The thing.
it's just the way that you connect. It's just an image that's being absorbed by your eyes, your brain, your sensors, whatever,
Maybe you read
and
that
your
somewhere.
brain just started determining that as gloomy, even though there's other people somewhere who just see it as
Delightful.
beautiful. They just love it.
I think it's just something you read somewhere, maybe in your childhood. I don't know. Maybe for me that.
Not necessarily just right. Sometimes you just said it, or you start thinking it, or it was gloomy on a
You
day
made
where
this
something
connection.
it was cloudy on a rough day that you've
Yeah,
had, and
yeah,
you connected that with
Or
with this gloominess.
Yeah.
There's many different
explanations.
possibilities that could be
That's
there.
true. That's true. Yeah,
And-
that makes sense. But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to
We're
say,
kind of getting off topic,
yeah,
but
what I'm trying to say is that, like, no matter what, these external states, they don't have to affect your emotional state. That's why you can be happy in any moment, you can be sad in any moment, really unrelated to any external experience. So that's why I thought that example of happiness might resonate with many people, because, you know, many of us struggle with this question of how can I be happy? How can I be more happy? Does money and success actually buy me happiness or not? So yeah, that's where when you realize that happiness comes from it. Like,
I think what's important is if I were to sum a lot of it in a simple way is, and I've said this before, maybe not on the podcast, but I've mentioned this to a lot of people that I know, is that when you're in the shed, you can only see the shed. When you're in deep shit, which is, you know, rough situation, and you just like everything around you is shit, it's obviously clear that you're only going to be able to see the shit that's in front of you. And sometimes we forget that behind this shit, or beyond the shit that you're seeing, is actually a better shit, maybe a light. What I'm trying to say with this very beautiful example is,
delightful.
even if you can only see the shit or the darkness that's surrounding you, remember that.
I'm gonna quote you in the picture. I'm gonna be quoting.
Remember that at the end of the day, it's all just a passing phase, and try to keep an open mind about
I think that's the
the experience that you're going through right now and how long it's gonna last and everything. What I like to do when I notice myself stiffening up, for example, I'm only seeing shit, is just any other meditative experience practice, thank you very much, is to kind of relax your shoulders, take a deep breath, and kind of try to zoom out at your body. For me, what works is asking the questions of like, who's aware that I'm thinking, who's aware that I'm feeling, who's aware of what's going on around me and inside me, and then that kind of gives me a little bit of distance from what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing, and the whole world as a whole. And most of the times, after I relax myself and get myself into a more open state, maybe that's when I hit a new realization that would get me out of the shit. Yeah. So it's important to find what works for you, of course, but keeping an open mind and remembering that even if you only see shit in front of you right now, there's better shit behind it.
Yeah, I guess the key takeaway here is that keeping an open mind. Like you can try to understand, you can consume all the self-help books and all the advice you want and listen to the gurus and the 10 courses online. But at the end of the day, all of these things, they might plant some seeds, but you don't have a more open mind and you are not that receptive, then the realization might be harder to find. And I mean, you can't find it anyway. It will find you, but you need to be in that open state where you're just willing to change the way that you think about things, willing to grow in the future. I guess that's it for this episode. So thank you so much for watching, and yeah, leave a like, drop a comment if you like this episode.
Leave us a comment in the next one.